I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
My next guest is probably one of those typical hard-driving entrepreneurs who, for many years, worked 80 hours and found success early on, but then got a wake-up call that completely changed his life. Dave Valentine tells the story of how he was able to grow and expand several businesses simultaneously, and then at some point in time realized that his process needed a rework, a reorg, if you will. We had a great conversation, Dave and I, and he really had some great insights into things like what is conscious capitalism, how do we build our businesses in such a way that not only support employees, the profit, but the planet, and how can we scale in such a way that doesn't kill us in the process. Dave owns 7 businesses which have generated over $1 billion collectively for over 1,000 clients, including major brands and Fortune 100 companies like Target, Time Magazine, and American Express. And when his doctor asked him at the age of 29, "Hey, are you prepared for a heart attack?" he realized he needed to learn how to scale businesses without the stress killing him. Dave now runs his companies from the mountains next to a river and 3 waterfalls using a conscious capitalism and unconventional marketing approach. He was able to rapidly grow his businesses by investing money into his people instead of paid advertising. After selling his first business, he acquired 3 companies and has invested $3 million into other companies over the year. His mission is to employ over 200,000 people and revolutionize the way we reward good talent. He wants to be so big that governments can't ignore him because his companies take up too much of their GDP. Or, put simply, he wants to buy the freedom that was stolen by greedy individuals and corporations. Man, I love this guy. So, my next guest on the Business of Intuition is Dave Valentine. So, Dave, it's great having you on the show. Let's start right off. What the heck is conscious capitalism? Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but you really are dove into this. I almost went to a conference on it. I just want you to give our listeners. I missed it. That's the one down in Austin, Texas. Did you go?
Yep. No, I didn't go. Okay. But so basically the idea is, right, like it's taking the idea of triple bottom line. Okay, we're going to care about not only our profits, but people and the planet as well, and up-leveling that again, and just feeling like, okay, what does it really mean to care about our people? What does it actually look like to invest not only in our staff in a way that's going to help them grow and elevate and develop as people, and also, how do you have humanity? How do you have compassion? How do you treat people as people and give them the sort of work environment that actually elevates their life? And not just say, hey, listen, this is a place to come work and you get a paycheck and good luck spending time at home with your family, but actually caring about it. So it's really people, planet, and profit oriented. And a lot of big companies that people have heard of are subscribers to conscious capitalism.
Definitely. Yeah, we were looking into this a long time ago, this whole triple bottom line scorecard process. Could you kind of define a little bit more about what that is and how you're able to align, let's say, your people side, your people dashboard with, say, the planet or with profits? How? Because in some ways you could just simply say, well, triple bottom line, that just simply means that you have 3 different, P&L statements or 3 different ways of measuring things. But how do you then align the benefit of one to cascade into the benefit of another?
Yeah, so 7 out of the 8 businesses that I own are fully remote. So that does a lot of things, right? So being fully remote saves a lot of carbon. No one's driving to work anymore.
Right.
We're not paying to heat or air condition a large office space at all. And that's also people oriented. All the people that work for us, they are starving. And there's lots of data and research that shows us right now. People are hungry for fully remote work still. They want that. They got used to it during the pandemic. They're still aiming for it. And there was an interesting stat that came out that showed that on average, people are saving 10 hours a week in driving if they work from home. Well, what a beautiful way to be people-oriented in order to give them more time and space to be with their family and to do what they want to do, their significant others and friends and whatnot. So that's one way where those two things intersect. And then the third way that intersects with profit is we don't have overhead for a physical location, right? And so we're able to do some cool stuff because of that allows us to be people-oriented as well. So instead of having everybody just drive to a central location all the time and feed that beast, we decide that once a year we take an all-staff retreat. Last year we went to Estes Park, Colorado. It was a fully paid experience for every staff member. I think we rented 10 townhouses and 7 condos. It was nuts, man. We had people come in and make food for us. And it was this incredibly dynamic experience that the staff got to have with each other, where they really got to experience, hey, this is what it's like to hang out. They had a great time. It was very much a learn and play sort of atmosphere. People went on hikes and had a blast together. And so we basically took some of that money that we were going to use for a office space and just utilized that for that staff retreat and gave people a different experience.
That's great. That's wonderful. And so do you know of the concept of a B Corp? And if you do, could you tell people what that means?
Yeah, so a B Corp is very similar to the ideals that I'm talking about in this triple bottom line status. And it's somewhere between, it's not a nonprofit and it's not a traditional corporation. It's somewhere in between. And a lot of companies that are what some of my friends would say are mission focused or purpose driven, they would be filed as a B Corp. Now, there are specific rules and laws that I'm not as familiar with, Dean, as what they have to do to be a B Corp technically. I do know that there are quite a few regulations that go along with being a B Corp, and it's a process to follow, similar to being a nonprofit organization, but again, it's definitely different.
Yeah, I think there's certain states have B Corp designation. It's much like an S Corp or C Corp, and you have to go through a process and fill out a bunch of forms. And I think, I may be wrong on this, but I think the original idea wasn't quite as altruistic as it became. I think that we had, when we had the big resignation, there were some shareholders that were rather upset by the fact that they were losing so much money. And so by changing it to a more of a mission-focused B Corp, we can simply say, you're not to expect this kind of return because we're more purpose-focused. We're not going to be, cranking out the high margins as we would expect. But it is an interesting kind of thing, part of that whole space around conscious capitalism,
Absolutely.
Yeah, can we measure that kind of stuff? So you mentioned earlier before we started, and I've seen this in your bio as well, that you've got a lot of different companies going on. A lot of them, you said, or if not all of them, are virtual, and it sounds like they're doing quite well. You've got a family, you've got a couple of places that you kind of cohabitate. The question that somebody would say is, I'm getting tired just listening to this guy. How do you do it all? I mean, the question then becomes how do you scale? How do you scale in such a way that as an owner operator who normally has a problem with letting go and trust and being a bit of a micromanager, how do you do that? How do you get 5-6 different businesses spinning all at the same time?
Yeah, you have to have processes in place, right? So one of those processes is implementing EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which we run all 8 companies with. And one of the things that's a key element of EOS is having weekly level 10 meetings with your leadership teams of each company. In those L10s, we create what we call scorecards. Hey, listen, what are the key metrics for each business that I could be on a beach enjoying a Mai Tai, and I could get that spreadsheet sent to me, and I would know, okay, great, let's get another shot of tequila and go snorkeling. Or it's time to catch a flight and get back home as quickly as possible because the business is in trouble. So number one, we've got those scorecards put together so that I can see everything at a high level at a glance without there being some big concern of, hey, what's happening in this business? What's happening in that business? So that's number one. Number two, one of the things that I realized pretty quickly was in order to have a great operation, you have to have great operators. So I put together and created a manual standard. It's becoming an e-course as we speak for training operators. How do you run a Dave Valentine business? What does that look like? Goes into the core values, looks at, hey, how do we interact with staff? What are the key metrics that you as the COO or the director of operations or whatever that person is, depending on the size of the company, what are the things that you need to be looking at, right? And so putting those two things together have been really helpful. And then the last thing is really simple. You have to have your marketing and your sales figured out. And so we've figured out a long time ago, large corporations do something consistently and they're huge. And the thing that they do is they have what I like to call an outrageous offer. Something that sounds too good to be true, but actually isn't. An example, AT&T right now, they're like, hey, listen, if you switch from any other carrier to AT&T, everyone that switches, we will give them a brand new iPhone 14. Well, each one of those is $1,000 retail value, right? Maybe AT&T paying $500 for them. Nevertheless, family of four transfers over, that's $2,000 in hard costs they just gave out.
Right.
Well, AT&T's not dumb. So
you're starting a 3-year contract too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so
the lost leader,
they're going to make that money back. Yeah. Who cares? Right. So it's one of those things where there are ways that you can, especially as a small business, set up an offer that is more value driven and is going to actually increase your cost to the person that's buying it, customer, client, whatever. And it's going to give them more value or at least perceived value. And so it's going to increase your margins while at the same time increasing your ability to acquire new business at a lower price point. And so we do that across the board. And what's really happened is fantastic is we grow companies very, very, very quickly just by executing on those three items.
So what's your background? I mean, what was your education? What got you? Have you always been this sort of thinker, process guy? What was the spark that set it off?
Yeah, so for me, it comes down to intuition. Honestly.
Well,
yeah, I know, right? And as a small kid, I had this drive, this pull that was outside of myself, truly, to start to do entrepreneurial things. Now, part of that was my parents were always talking entrepreneurial shop talk around me. They were not themselves entrepreneurs when I was growing up. They were familiar with entrepreneurship, though. I had family that had done that, aunts and uncles, grandparents, etc. So we were always talking in this sort of language. So as a 10-year-old, I started selling candy bars and pencils and pens and erasers out of my backpack, right? And I think I asked my dad for a $5 loan and paid him back, the next week because I'd made $10. And so just kind of ran that business for a few years as a kid. When I went to go get my undergrad, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I'd been doing marketing as an internship and advertising in-house and video editing and running social media on Friendster and MySpace because that dates me a lot, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was something more that I wanted to give my time and attention towards. That being said, my undergrad's in philosophy. So as I like to tell people, I'm qualified to be a really great bartender.
Yeah.
Nothing else. And so I just have an idea of, hey, I study how other people do things. I deconstruct other people's success. And then I repackage that into another format. And sometimes you don't need to deconstruct it. You can just go, hey, they're using EOS to run their companies and their companies are very successful. I'm just going to adopt that. And I may use some of that and like Dave-ify some of that stuff. And at the same time, like it's not broken. Don't try and fix it. Just use it. So I think it's just a lot for me of understanding the levers of what people are really looking for in the marketplace, and then trying to build products and services that actually fit those needs.
Some have said that EOS may not be appropriate for all cultures. Do you agree?
I think it depends on what cultures they're talking about. I do know that EOS clips out at like 200 to 250 employees. You're not going to be able to get beyond that with EOS.
Right.
Does it fit all cultures? I don't know. It works for our culture. It seems intuitive to the people that we interact with, and our teams are extraordinarily diverse. They are all based in the States, though. So perhaps there would be global cultures that wouldn't engage with it and find it helpful.
Yeah. And so what happened when you were 29?
Yeah. So 29, you're getting old.
Yeah, right.
My wife, yeah, right. Yeah. My wife said to me, she goes, hey, I was an athlete in high school, played multiple sports. She's like, you haven't had a physical since you were like 18, maybe you should go. We just welcomed we're about to welcome our second kid into the world. And she was like, maybe you should go just get checked out so we know that you're okay. And I had built up my first company to 7 figures just that year. So I was like, sure, I'll go. So I go in, do all the tests. Doc comes back. I go back a week later. Doc comes in and he goes, hey, I've got your test results. I'm like, cool, great. And he goes, so Dave, how do you know you're going to have a heart attack? And I'm like, I don't understand the question, Doc. He goes, we've tested 4,500 people. You're the most stressed out person we've ever tested. It's not even close. If you don't change your life, you're not going to see 40. I was like, okay, wow. So that put me on this path. Literally 3 days later, I was like, okay, I had to do something. I've changed something. But at the time, I had networked my way to a 7-figure business. What most people don't know is only 7% of businesses in the country do 7 figures. So it's actually a mark of success. So I had done the thing, right? I'm 29. I've got a $1 million business plus. I'm doing well in my mind. And so I needed to start figuring out new ways to engage with life and engage with work. So the first things that I started doing was I just said, okay, every day, this is like 3 days afterwards, I'm like, every day your job is to do 2 things. It's to drink 1 16-ounce glass of water, and it's to go for a walk for 5 minutes. Anything above that, you're winning. It's a bonus. But your only job is to do those 2 things. And 19 out of 20 days, I'd go for a 30-minute walk. I'd go for an hour walk. I'd drink 100 ounces of water. There would be 1 out of 20, though, where the whole day was just absolutely bonkers. And I was getting that 5-minute walk in at 10:30 at night, and I had switched from coffee and tea to alcohol, and there was no water. And so it was like, okay, I got to drink this. But it got me easy wins. And now, I work out 5, 6, 7 times a week. I meditate daily. I went and did a stress test and checkup recently, and my doc goes, you're one of the most healthy individuals we've seen. I'm like, well, hey, look at that. You can really turn this ship around with some years under your belt.
So was your wife aware? Like what she said, I'm not surprised that you got this diagnosis from your doc.
Yeah, she knew. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people that drives really hard. I don't expect other people to work as hard as me, right? And so I've got crazy stories, man. Crazy stories where I was just going absolutely nuts. And my wife was deeply concerned. I mean, there was a time where I really was having a medical emergency. I had an infection in my body that was localized to internal organs. And I was like, man, I feel terrible, but I've got to go do this sales call. It's in Dallas. I need to drive an hour. She's like, you can barely stand up. You're in so much pain. We don't know what's going on, by the way, at the time. She's like, you can barely stand up. How the hell are you going to drive to Dallas and back? And you can't take this meeting. I'm like, I could totally do this. Luckily, the guy said, hey, I got to reschedule. And so she was like, I'm going to take you to the doc. So, I mean, this was just like a common occurrence for me. My wife would just watch me push myself. 80-hour work weeks were a constant. It was not atypical. And that was happening long before I started the business. When we were dating in college, I was working 2 or 3 jobs and go to school full time. It's just, I was ready to get done with the school part and go right into the work part. So she knew, and that's part of the reason why she encouraged me to go get the checkup done.
So now that you've sort of figured out to manage your health, you told me, I think, that you're living in a pretty nice place right now in terms of nature and waterfalls and so forth.
Yeah.
Has that changed the success of your businesses, or has it made them more successful?
My businesses are more successful than they've ever been. They're growing faster than they've ever grown.
So what is it? I guess I'm wondering, if you're the brainchild of all this and energy doesn't ever change. I mean, it changes, but you never lose it. It just gets morphed into something else. You burn, a stick, the energy of the burning goes into the smoke. It never moves out of the universe, right? So you've expanded and you've done well and you've changed your internal energy, but how has it changed the external results of your companies by changing your own mindset and your own health?
Yeah, I mean, what it's done is it's allowed us to go from having 1 company to having 8. And it's interesting. So I'm always big into like personality tests and stuff like that. Dean, are you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I 2 that have been very helpful to me. One is the Enneagram. Have you heard of this one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's great.
7.
Yeah. How did you know?
I don't know. I see my brother there.
So one of the things that we love across the businesses with Enneagram is it doesn't just talk about who you are and it's one thing. It's 9 numbers is how they categorize your personality. It also talks about how do you act whenever you're stressed and how do you act whenever you're completely at ease or healthy. Depends on what word you want to use. And so one of the gifts that's been for me is it gives me an understanding into myself and into my staff. It also helps me in my relationship with my wife. Hey, how are we doing? Are we stressed? Are we in homeostasis? Are we actually moving towards a growth edge, towards being healthy? The other one that's been helpful to me, and this was a little bit more woo-woo than a personality test. Unfortunately, everybody that I've given it to, they're like, oh my gosh, this is really helpful. It's called My Human Design. And it's essentially like,
yeah.
And so they have different energy types, is what they call it, which again, I know sounds woo-woo, but whatever, here we are, we're talking about. So it's the one that my energy type is it's called a projector. And so essentially projectors are these people that do really well not working all the time. And all the literature around it is like, look, projectors are always working in their brains. But if they're always sitting at their computer typing, they're not going to produce at the same level. And so what I did early on in my entrepreneurial career was I thought that action meant that I was getting somewhere, getting traction. What I've discovered is it's less about action and it's more about what's going on in here. If I can actually use and leverage the intelligence that I've been gifted with and cultivated over the years, it's a far better result than if I'm doing the things. So I try not to do more. I'm finishing my first book right now. That's the only thing that I'm actively, doing on a regular basis that's production-wise going out. Outside of, I show up to meetings, I give my thoughts, and then those thoughts are what's really leading to a lot of the success that we're having.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It made me want to go back and find out what mine is. And my wife and I've talked about, we never got too deeply involved with it, but it really just resonated, made a lot of sense. But it kind of was fleeting. We got to get back to it. So you got a book coming out. You mentioned earlier also that there's some 6 pieces to that book, to your philosophy that the book is sharing. Go over that real quickly if you could.
Yeah, so I do consulting with a handful of clients where we're actually expanding the consulting side of things right now because so many people are clamoring for the help that we're providing. What's been interesting though, Dean, is that every time that I start to do consulting, my first question is, do you have core values? And, 4 out of 5 times the answer is yeah, we've got them, but we don't do anything with them. And they exist. It's kind of like a mission statement or vision statement. And they're a thing that you do to put into a pitch deck or something. And then they cease to be important. And so what ends up happening is I'll end up talking with these entrepreneurs, these business owners, and I'll share with them our 6 core values. As I share those core values with them, they just go, man, I like all of them. Great, take them. They're not mine. Enjoy, leverage all of them. And so we now have a number of clients that have just taken those and run with them, and they're now their core values, or maybe they take 3 and they add their own 2 or whatever, right? So essentially what this book is it's a definition of what those 6 core values are. And it's sharing them with the world and how we execute on them. What does it look like for us to hire people based off our core values? Review. That's the thing that we do every quarter because we do EOS. So we do quarterly reviews of employees, and the employees review their supervisors. And then we promote and fire based off those core value scores, right? So the whole idea around these is really to give us the right synergy. Oh God, I can't believe I just said that word. Of dynamics of people to generate the results we're looking for. So they have an order to them. I'll go through them really fast.
Yeah, please.
So the first one is tenacity. Hey, look, you got to have the ability to just say, I'm going to try and figure out the problem no matter what it takes. I want to get the results. I want to figure it out. Curiosity. Curiosity is a way that you get to the answer, right? Hey, I wonder why that campaign for marketing worked and this one didn't. I wonder why this student's finding success and that one's not. What's happening in our conversations? What's going on? The third one is initiative. It's pretty easy. If you see something broken, go fix it. Like, you don't need to wait on somebody in leadership. You don't need to wait for somebody else to do it. Just fix it. The next 3 are accountability, transparency, and humanity. So all 6 of those are in order. What's really interesting, Dean, that I'll share with you and your listeners, I don't share this with most people, is that that's the order for every what I call frontline staff, or anyone that's dealing day to day with pulling the levers and making the machines happen and interacting with clients and customers and students. We actually reverse the order of the core values once you get into leadership. So we say, hey, listen, in order to be a leader, you have to lead with humanity, transparency, and accountability, right?
Yeah.
And whenever we talk about it, people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. However, it's counterintuitive to a lot of how people think. They're like, well, once you get into leadership, you drive. And it's like, you can, if you have a driven nature using humanity. Hey, I want to come alongside you to make sure that I'm giving you all the tools and resources that you need to find success here and at home. How can I help you do that? Right? Telling them transparently, here's what's going on in the company. Here's what we're heading for. Here's some of the issues we got to solve. Let's figure that out together. Being the first one to say, hey, you guys failed because of me. I didn't prep you enough. I didn't give you enough detail, whatever that is, right? And so when we throw out those core values, that's what the book's about. And that's kind of what we do, how we do everything.
That sounds great. So tell me, how can people connect with you aside from the book that's coming out? And by the way, when is it coming out?
So it's going to be coming out in March, which is next month. So I don't...
Until it's going live, it'll be already out. So what's the name of the book?
Yeah, the name of the book is The Core Values. It'll be, you can search for it. Dave Valentine is my name.
Yeah.
You can also find me on all social media at RealDVal, RealDVAL. I actually post a lot on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook if you're still hanging out there. And then, the last thing is you can go check out my website, davevalentine.co/OO. There's a method that I use to help all of our businesses scale. It's creating outrageous offers, something that sounds too good to be true. People come in, they love to engage with it. I put together an e-course that we normally charge $2,500 for, but I want to give it to your listeners for free. And they can go to davevalentine.co/OO to get that offer.
Fantastic. Dave, great to talk to you.
You too, Dean. This has been fun, brother.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy your time up there in the Seattle area, I guess in Washington, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.